This meeting is being recorded.
Hello, good morning again. Welcome to part two. Professor
Yes.
Rinderman. So we ended part one on fraud. And are you going to give some real examples of fraud?
No, I want to point out that with technological modernization, it becomes more difficult to make fraud in certain ways. For example, with using Uber or Lyft, taxi drivers or private taxi drivers are very well controlled. So you pay with credit card and so on, and they are controlled at least to a certain degree by the company and by commentaries and so on. And when I was, for example, in 2018 in Brazil using Uber, there I haven't had any negative experiences. So there's a and also we have such technological driven progress in reduction of fraud using credit cards and so on. So there's new fraud possible and so on, but it's better possible than in the past to control such fraud.
All right.
For example, once my credit card was skimmed or copied or something like this, and they was, when I remember correctly, somebody made it in the United States, and then they made some purchases in Jamaica. When I remember correctly, but for me there was no damage. This I was protected by the bank.
Yes. Jamaica is known for fraud. So
Mhm.
recently in Jamaica, there was a feature on a phone. They refer to this phone as a bangers. So the
Mhm.
bangers is an old-fashioned cellular phone. And apparently scammers like to use it because it's difficult to trace the origin of the calls. So
Mhm.
one scammer was interviewed and he said, our technology is more sophisticated, and he was praising the profession. And if you paid careful attention to what this guy was saying, he was basically indicated that to be a scammer, one needed to work really hard. So deceiving and defrauding other people, wow, that's like a profession now. But again, as we said earlier, that's the mindset of people who are at a lower stage of psychosocial development.
What do you mean by psychosocial development? You refer to
Yeah,
the
I kept using
association
the
of
term
model. Yeah.
psychosocial development. So by
Yeah.
psychosocial development, I am describing the ability of a society to engage in abstract conceptualization and analysis. So people who are at a higher level of psychosocial development, they are able to appreciate scientific links. They understand causation. They understand how causes occur and how one cause can affect an outcome. So that's
Mhm.
what I mean by psychosocial development.
They
But for
free.
those who understand, and George Wooster Deacock, they can look him up.
Yeah. And the people with higher cognitive ability levels also usually have a more long-term perspective. They
Yes,
look at the advantages of and disadvantages of behavior done today for their state in 1 year, or 2 years, or 5 years, or 10 years, and so on. Mhm.
yes.
Mhm.
Long-term orientation, that's
Yes.
really important. But I have another important question to ask, Rindam. When I read your study, I remember you saying that some of Richard Lind's figures were actually too high.
Mhm.
I remember seeing that your figures were, and I'm not going to use the term more realistic, but you're basically saying that when you reanalyze the data, Richard's figures were too ambitious.
Yeah. This depends on countries.
Yeah,
In
yeah,
some,
yes.
I used data from different sources. Let's repeat the names. I used here the sources for student achievement studies. For example, I used my own compilation. I used data from Angrist et al. From the World Bank. I used from health scientists, health statisticians, Lim et al. And I used from the economists Gust, Hanuschek, and Westman, and there are some deviations for, and of course I used the psychometric intelligence studies of Richard Lynn, and to compare the psychometric intelligence results with the student assessment results, it is necessary to bring them on the same scale, and you can bring them on the student assessment scale of 500 and standard deviation 100, or you can bring them on the IQ scale with the mean of 100 and the standard deviation of 15. And when you bring them to the same scale, you will see that for some countries there are larger differences. For let me say, I think it was, for example, Iraq, but let me look here in my tables. For example, Indonesia, I have from my own compilation, I have let's go to IQs 80, and from limit al 77, and from student achievement studies from Gust 83. So the differences are not so large, but there were other countries. I think Iraq. Let me look for Iraq. There were huge differences. Iraq were 355 and 429 from one compilation to the other compilation, and so we have differences among student achievement study compilations, and we have some differences more or less by chance between the Lynn, David Becker and Lynn results and the student assessment results. Right? So now let's look at the huge differences of the Lynn results to the other ones. Let me see if there are. Let us come as first for the general agreement. For example, first world averages, World Bank 96 in the IQ measures, in the IQ scale, limit all 96 also, from Gust and Hanuschek, Westman 99. So the difference of 3 IQ points, and Lynn and Becker came to 96. So no difference. Now let's look at third world developing countries. There we have, I only will tell you the numbers, 73, 74, 75, 74. So no difference. So let's look for the largest difference for the psychometric intelligence test results. Yeah, Egypt. I think this is example you will find it. Egypt, we have the result from Andres et al. In the student achievement scale, in the IQ scale. For Egypt is World Bank 77, Lim, health scientist, 72 for Egypt, Gust, Hanuschek, and Westman for Egypt 79, and Lynn and Becker 86. So there's a difference of about 14 IQ points between Lim et al. and Lynn and Becker. So Lynn and Becker much higher results, and it depends on which samples Lynn and Becker have chosen, and sometimes they are slightly biased because the people are too much educated than average in the country, or less educated than average in the country, and the education means leads to higher IQs, and education is also a selective factor. We have not spoken about this. Education selects also for intelligence, and there are some more or less random differences between all these sources, but I cannot see a systematic difference for, I do not remember exactly. Let's look for sub-Saharan Africa, but I have it here in my results, in my study, and but there's nothing systematically. For example, that psychometric intelligence studies come to lower results for Africa, or much lower results than other than the student assessment approach. I do not remember, but let me look. I will look for Africa in my study if I can find there something. South Africa, for example, Lynn and Becker, South Africa now in the student assessment scale. Lynn and Becker, South Africa, 361, and Gust 340, Lim 348, World Bank 352 and I 299. So mine is really lower than all the other ones. So, but you cannot say that Lynn and Becker come to a biased low result for South Africa. This does not mean that in the older versions of the Lin and Van Haan dataset were not mistakes. There were the mistake, for example, about Guinea, and we have also such mistakes in the student assessment studies. If, for example, if they use TIMS for Kazakhstan, or if they use uncorrected China PISA results for China, because China, the PISA study was only done in the eastern well-developed rich regions of Shanghai, Peking, and nearby regions, and we cannot use these data from these regions in China to estimate uncorrected directly the results for total China.
Okay, quick point again. Psychosocial development, I gave a definition, but when we discuss psychosocial development in this conversation, we're referring to the theory of psychosocial development developed by a leading European psychologist, Jean Piaget. So that he's the person we're talking about. Because in another context, it could have a different meaning. So I'm just saying this to clear up any confusions. Because Heiner, these people, they are really clownish, and I mean polite. So you give a definition of psychosocial development consistent with the theory of child development, and some idiot Googles the term and gets something else, and he says, look at those people. They're defining the word and they don't know the meaning. Yeah, so these are the little cheap tricks that they pull to discredit real research. So in your article, in responding to your critics, this is what you say. Despite all possible criticisms of implausible sounding results from cognitive ability studies, one should not forget that even with run-of-the-mill data produced by large international organizations with hundreds to thousands of employees, unusual results occur. Results on GDP are also odd and strange for single countries. Example, according to the IMF, Ireland is the richest country in the world. Guyana is richer than France, Japan poorer than Andorra, etc. So even established organizations sometimes can produce information that appears to be dubious.
Yes, they are huge. The results themselves are a little bit strange. Ireland is the richest country of the world, and second, there are huge differences between the different sources for GDP. I think it was the World Bank, CIA, or Human Development Report, and so on. Let me look.
Because Ireland has a relatively high GDP per capita income, just like Luxembourg and Monaco and all those countries. Smaller countries on average are actually quite richer. So, but Heiner, some years ago, you did a study I like quite a bit. It was published by one of the outlets of Science Direct, and that study was on IQ and psychosocial development in Africa.
Nigeria, this is a Nigeria study?
Yeah, it was you were co-author, and the other co-author was a woman.
Falkenhayn.
It was on rationality. We were comparing Africans and Germans. Cognitive ability and epistemic rationality, a study in Nigeria and Germany.
Yes.
I think it complements your latest study.
Yeah, we used their usual intelligences. I think it was the Raven, and we used their questions about or measuring rationality, cognitive rationality, epistemic rationality in everyday life. And one question was, for example, is it possible that God puts money in your portemonnaie? What's the usual word in English? Portemonnaie? No, what do you say?
Your pocket.
Pocket. Yeah, is it possible to put money, God, in your pocket? And there was a higher agreement for this statement in Nigeria than in Germany. So there's a correspondence between cognitive ability and epistemic rationality. As rationality means here to think in a rational way, and it's not dealing now with rationality in the way which aims we choose or how we spend your money and so on. This would be a broader approach of rationality.
Einer, what's also interesting is that the Nigerian who were interviewed were educated Nigerians.
Yeah.
Yeah, many of them, these weren't random Nigerians. These were people with some level of education. They were urban people. I read the study, and that's why I find it interesting, because after reading it, I said to myself, okay, modernization and better schooling should increase IQ scores, but are some regions more plastic than others?
So,
why are some regions still untouched by modernization? So in the arena of witchcraft in Africa, some of the people who are on the commission to punish people for engaging in witchcraft have PhDs. They're highly educated people. They're not stupid. They're urbane. They understand chemistry. So why do they still cling to these beliefs?
Your question is if there are different regions which are differently sensible for the effect
yes.
of meditation.
That's my question.
You do not mean geographical regions, but cognitive regions or areas of life. Is this correct?
Yeah, cognitive region. So why would somebody in Africa with a PhD lobbying for the punishment of witches?
Yeah, I think we from the cognitive paradigm sometimes do not consider enough other factors having influence on our thinking on our life. And for example, one important factor is how the social environment is thinking. If we are surrounded by many people who are believing in a certain way, strange or not strange things, usually we adapt to a certain degree our own thinking and our own behavior to the dominant belief systems and behavioral styles in our social environment. Our relatives, our friends, or what the media and so on are producing, and we adapt to a certain degree to this. The other point is that we underrate the effect of culture and worldviews and orientations. And for example, in 2018, I published a study with Noah Carl about human rights. And
I heard that study, yes.
And applying the Piaget-Özdekov theory on human rights, there is a Kohlberg also. Piaget-Kohlberg-Özdekov theory on human rights, there's a clear positive impact of cognitive development on moral thinking, on moral attitudes. And there are also studies at the individual level showing there's a connection between cognitive development, moral judgment, and ethical behavior. And we can apply this to the cross-country level, and we see a positive impact of cognitive ability on human rights. A higher cognitive ability level in a country, the higher is the level of human rights. But it's not a whole message. we can see that there's also a huge impact and a larger impact of culture on human rights. Cognitive ability can explain to a certain degree cross-country differences, but culture is more important. Where we have Protestantism, we have higher levels, or Christianity, we have higher levels of human rights, and where we have Islam, we have lower levels of human
Yes.
rights. And this is perfectly in agreement with the content of their religions. And we underrate we people from the cognitive paradigm, we usually underrate the impact of culture. And let me say two sentences more about the human rights study. This is one of my less perceived studies I have ever published. Nobody is reading this study.
But
Nobody is,
why human rights differ, that study?
yeah, nobody is.
I read it.
Yeah, very good. But it's nobody cites the study, and I thought last year I have to make a YouTube video about this study, and I made a longer YouTube video about the study and put it there on YouTube and so on. But it's impossible. It's first of all, less than 100 people have looked at this video, and it's impossible even for me to find this video on Google. With Google on YouTube, or looking within YouTube for my own video. If I look for Rindermann, or if I look for human rights, or if I look for Rindermann and human rights together, there are no hits.
No, let me tell you what you
shadow
should
banned.
do.
It's impossible to find
No,
my own.
let me tell you what you should do.
What
you should do. You should,
okay, you first and then I.
yeah, you should make a video with the title "Richard Lynn was a racist crackpot scientist," and then talk about your paper.
Yeah.
And yeah, all the clones will rush to read it,
Yeah.
even though he's been replicated. But whatever.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, and what I made, I put then a note on ResearchGate, and in ResearchGate I put a link, and with this link in ResearchGate I can find my own video on YouTube which I uploaded there. If not, I would not. I cannot find this video on YouTube. Mm-hmm. It's totally absurd. Human rights. Why countries differ?
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
and
maybe we can make in the future a shorter interview about human rights, if you want.
of course. And on the same topic, we're on the topic of psychosocial development. I want to refer to your paper on HIV/AIDS with George Wooster Diekoff.
Mm-hmm.
And be as controversial as possible. I really like that paper.
Mm-hmm. Thanks.
Why
Thank you.
are rates of HIV/AIDS higher in Africa?
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. Mm-hmm.
Why?
Why is higher? Because the people. It's two reasons. First, we have a cognitive reason. The people do not apply protection, to use condoms, and they think, for example, if you make sex with a virgin, this helps you to cure AIDS, and that AIDS is only only bad people can get HIV and AIDS and so on. There's a huge array of cognitive wrong think which leads to wrong behavior. This is one cause. The other cause is that people are not or less oriented towards monogamous lifestyle.
Yes.
Many richer men, they are married to one woman, and then they have a girlfriend or two girlfriends, and so on. And younger women, they like to have sugar daddies and so on. Yeah. And there's interesting that there's some sexual networks. So one man has sexual contact to 4 or 5 women, and other women, one woman has contact to 4 or 5 men, and if they make non-protected, not safe for sex, this will lead to a spread of sexually transmitted diseases. These are the two reasons.
Yeah, so it really boils down to lower human capital levels, promiscuity, and superstition. I don't know if you are acquainted with John Caldwell. John Caldwell was a distinguished demographer who wrote extensively on the prevalence of HIV/AIDS in Africa, and his findings are quite similar to some of your findings. So John argued that HIV/AIDS, the prevalence of it was higher in Africa because of promiscuity. That was a major issue. That some men thought that they were wired to have multiple women. Many of the younger professional women had no problem sleeping with sugar daddies to get money. There was also an element of superstition, but he primarily ruled out the element of superstition to focus on human capital and cultural factors. Yes. So I'm actually looking for one of his articles online. John, he said. He built on the work of Jack Woody.
I think I know studies from Caldwell, but it would be nice if you send me them and I can
Yes.
if I have them.
They're really important. And there's also another article that I'm looking at right now, published in Discover magazine on HIV/AIDS in Africa. It is titled, it's a recent article, 2020, Why is AIDS Worse in Africa?
Oh yeah, send me this.
Yes.
Probably I don't know. I don't remember.
Yeah, so it says the virus has spread rapidly in Botswana. Botswana is an interesting case because it's one of the better countries in Africa. 2 decades ago,
Botswana, high
yes,
levels of government effectiveness, much better than all the other countries surrounding them, I think.
yes.
And Botswana, Botswana wanted to send us 20,000 elephants to Germany because Germany wants to forbid to import ivory. They want to sell ivory, and Germany is forbidding it. And so the president of Botswana wants to send to Germany 20,000 elephants because Botswana has too many elephants.
But Botswana has too many elephants. But Botswana is an interesting case. I've interviewed some people who have discussed Botswana and why it's successful and pre-colonial culture. Interesting stuff, but not relevant today. In your article, because you focused on the negative aspects of developing countries and also the positive aspects, you made us aware of an example of some people you met in developing countries who were with really good guesstimates. Do you remember those stories? You were a young man, and you said that you met you gave two different scenarios, and despite not being formally educated, they knew the direction.
Repeat it about what? About it was about natives.
Natives. Yes, you found some smart natives.
It was about Yanomami Indians, or what is it?
Yes.
Yeah. It was 3 times in the region of the Yanomami Indians, and what was really interesting for me to see how good their perceptual abilities are and how good are their orientation abilities. Regarding their perceptual abilities, they I was in the Kawaburi River and going with a canoe, and I was hearing from the far there was coming a boat with a motor, and I was afraid of gold diggers, garimpeiros in Brazil, gold diggers, and they are they can be very dangerous, and they can kill me, and so on. And so I hide myself at among trees in the river, and there were many trees surrounding me, and their leaves and branches were going to the river, and they were coming with a high speed there with their boat, and there was an Yanomami Indian or an Indian from another tribe, and he saw me there, you know. And this, you have to know, to go with a boat in an Amazonian river, it is really, really boring after half an hour or 20 minutes. You see only on the right, left, you see only leaves, green, 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 and nothing else. And but this Indian, he was so attentive that he saw me here hidden below the branches. Or another example, this example was 1985. The other example is 2001. I was there with Yanomami Indians, and they saw very far away in the trees birds they can possibly hunt. So it's incredible how what they can see. And now regarding perception skills, I was this Indian. He saw me in my boat, and the gold diggers, the group with this Indian, they picked me up, and they were very friendly. The boss wrote on my map a note for his colleagues in Portuguese. Here, this is the German young guy. Don't treat him bad. Treat him well, and so on. And I was there several days with this gold diggers. And one day the boss came and said there was falling down a small airplane with gold in the jungle, and we should look for this airplane and pick up the gold. And so we made a trip. Me, a gold digger, a Brazilian, and an Indian, and we were walking through the jungle an entire day, and of course we did not find any airplane there, because it's impossible to see anything in the jungle. So if you don't know exactly where something is, it's impossible to find something, because you see only about 5 to 10 meters, and it's an absurd idea to find an airplane there from the ground. You need a drone or airplane up and look, and so on. So, but what was really interesting is that we made a trip for one day, running through the jungle, and at the evening we come back on another way to the same point, to the camp. And it is really a miracle for me how this native can find the way. Last example, we were going on the Rio Kawaburi, and this is a river which many curves and so on, meandering. I don't know if this is an English word. In German we say meandern, going. And I knew that in the west there's a street from Saugabe to Kukui, and I used my in Spanish we say brújula, my compass. You say English compass?
Yeah, we say compass in English. Yes, that's the
compass. I used my compass to check where's the west, and I was hitting it. And I asked an Indian there on the boat, do you know where is the street? And the street is in the west. And he always, in every curve of the river, he pointed to the correct direction, to the west, in spite of this was a cloudy day. And even if it's not cloudy, if the sun, you see, it's usually too high. In the midday, it's too high. You cannot use the position of the sun to find the north, south, west, and east. And so it was incredible how these two persons always knew where are the directions and where we are.
All right. So before we go over, I must share the snippet that I was looking for. This is what I really wanted to put from the article published in Discover magazine 2020.
Yeah.
John Caldwell, that's his name.
Yeah.
Australian demographer John Caldwell pointed to the cultural desire for many children and other aspects of African society that contributed to a greater tolerance of promiscuous behavior than in the West. Caldwell's view sparked controversy. Recently, though, some experts, including epidemiologist James Chin of the University of California at Berkeley, have revisited the theory. Chin believes it's the only possible explanation. People tell me not to say it, but I strongly believe it.
Mhm.
Expert
Yeah.
opinion. But this
Yeah.
is what I also need to say. So,
Mhm.
Heiner, some people on Twitter didn't like your article, and apparently there's no this stupid clarification in front of it. I've read it. I think it needs to be removed. If you're going to criticize an article, point out specific flaws in the methodology.
Mhm.
Whining on Twitter, that's not a reason for an article to be retracted or for a clarification to be in front of it. I really think it should be removed. I think
Mhm. But
having it there is not ethical at all because you're discouraging people from reading the article based on some random person on Twitter whining.
yeah, I
Uh,
think this is only of a temporary, or so only for some time. This notice will be there. I hope this maybe for 1 or 2 weeks or 3 weeks. They need some time to check the content. But of course, I'm not happy about it.
check what content. What are they checking?
I don't know. I don't know
Because no, but
the.
IQ scores in developing countries are low. Like I like your study, but by reproducing this study, you wasted your time because we know this already.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
low. What is there to check? If it's low, it's just low. So for example, if my
Mhm.
IQ is 79, or if I am dumb, I'm just dumb. There's no
Mhm.
debate. There's no debate. If the scores
Yeah.
are low, they're just low.
Mhm. But intelligence for many people is a core trait for their identity. And the belief that other people are intelligent like us, it's a core identity of many left-wing people. And so this entire research paradigm um, is like an attack for them, and
Yeah,
if
and they're
so
also
they try to attack the people who are bringing a message which is not in agreement with their worldview.
yes, and they also think that some of those people should be removed from your mailing list. Like I won't call anybody's name because they should not be dignified, but you need to remove some of them from your mailing list. Like one said, she got an email from you and you were so happy, and I'm like, what's wrong with China? Why did he send that lady an email? Just remove them from your mailing list.
Yeah, I think it's Rebecca Sear. Yeah,
You
from
called her
London.
name. Why did you do that? She's not worthy.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. But thanks for being here. Bye. We have to
Mhm.
wrap up now. Thanks. We'll talk again. And I'll send you those emails.
Mhm.
All right. Bye. I know.
All right.